Hello and welcome to my presentation for Nursing Leadership, Nursing 4827 at Florida State College of Jacksonville BSN program. My name is Todd Wimberley and my topic of today is expanding the legal scope of ARNPs in Florida. For those of you who don't know, ARNP stands for Advanced Registered Nurse Practitioner. In Florida, as well as across the entire United States, we are facing a primary care shortage. Issues contributing to the shortage are retiring physicians, primary care access deficits, health professional shortage areas, HPSAs. We have a larger number of insured as a result of the recent Obamacare Act, and there is an overuse of emergency rooms. This overuse of emergency rooms can be contributed in large part to lack of access to primary care, affordable primary care. Roughly 50% of the physicians in Florida will reach the age of retirement over the next 10 years, and less than 50% of physicians in Florida accept Medicaid. The Affordable Care Act has added an estimated 3 million people to insurance rolls in Florida. This is via the Florida Association of Nurse Practitioners. And according to Van Fleet and Paradise 2015, Florida has 23.2% of its population living in what is called health professional shortage areas, HPSAs. These are areas where statistics have defined and identified that people have limited or no access to primary care physicians. For ARNPs in Florida, they experience what is called a restricted practice state. In a restricted practice state, the ARNPs are not allowed by Florida legislation to practice within the full scope of what the Board of Nursing outlines for them. Florida currently, as of this second, today is July 18th, 2016, is the only state in the union which does not allow ARNPs to prescribe DEA scheduled narcotics. And this issue, along with many others, have been holding nurses back from taking a leadership role and helping to fill this healthcare gap. In the state of Florida, the ARNPs must operate under a physician supervision. They cannot do basic things such as sign Baker Acts or death certificates or even certified DNRs. And until this bill passed, which we're going to talk about in the upcoming slides, ARNPs could not even prescribe narcotic medications for pain. But that is changing. That is changing, and this is a good thing. House Bill 423, defined or subtitled by the government as Access to Healthcare Services, passed on March 11th, 2016. And it will go into effect on January 1st, 2017. This bill was introduced and championed by Republican Carrie Pigman, who is a medical doctor, along with a Democrat named Daphne Campbell, who is an RN, or registered nurse. This is an excellent example of collaboration of medical disciplines across both professional and political lines to bring about change, which will provide for positive patient outcomes. Here we see two people, two leaders of their fields from separate party lines. We have a medical doctor and a registered nurse. Those two often, in historical terms, have clashed. They often have competing interests. In Florida, they certainly do. The American Medical Association certainly has tried very hard to limit the scope of not only RNs, but of course ARNPs as well. And here you have an example of a medical doctor who is a Republican and a registered nurse who is a Democrat, identifying that patient outcomes are being it's to the detriment of patient outcomes for the scope of practice to be limited by the legislation that currently was in place. identifying that, they came together, they negotiated, collaborated, they pressed their case, they brought it to the government, they brought it to the people, and they passed this monumental bill in the state of Florida. It's a huge step forward for ARNPs and for patients in the state of Florida. It's a huge advantage to furthering medical services and medical care in the state of Florida. Now, as I stated before, while this bill was passed in March 11th, it does not go into law. ARNPs cannot actually prescribe until January of 2017. The bill will allow ARNPs to prescribe all DEA drugs which have accepted medical use. Schedule II drugs may be prescribed in a limited 7-day supply. No psychotropic medications can be prescribed by ARNPs to children, those that are under the age of 18, unless the ARNP is a psychiatric nurse. The prescribing ARNPs will be required to complete a 3-hour continuing education course on controlled substances and prescriptions. This will be every 2 years. It'll be a requirement. And there will be a committee. There is a committee. They just actually came to final agreement and conclusion, made up of the Board of Nursing and some of the members from the Board of Medicine. There's actually 3 medical doctors, 3 ARNPs, as well as 1 pharmacist who got together and decided which drugs the ARNPs in Florida will not be able to prescribe. Just to go over the DEA drug scheduling to show what these ARNPs are going to be allowed to prescribe and not, we have here Schedule I drugs. Now, these drugs will not be allowed to be prescribed. These drugs are not legal in Florida for medical or any other use. There's no current acceptability of medical use of these drugs. They have a high abuse potential, and they have a high potential to be detrimental to psychosis of patients. Examples of these type of drugs are heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. And of course, I'm getting this information from the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. Schedule II drugs, according to the DEA drug scheduling, are medically approved substances, but they still have a high abuse potential, and they can be highly detrimental to the patients if used improperly and prescribed improperly. These are the type of drugs that the ARNPs will only be allowed to prescribe 7-day supplies of. But that's much better than no day supplies of. That's still a huge step forward for the ARNPs in Florida. These drugs, examples of these drugs are drugs like Vicodin, methamphetamine, Dilaudid, Demerol, etc. Other drug schedules, Schedule III drugs, are moderate to low abuse and dependence potential. Examples of these are Tylenol 3, ketamine, and anabolic steroids. Now, once again, this is not an all-inclusive list of all these drug schedules. This just kind of gives you an idea of what types of drugs fall into these schedules. Schedule 4, low abuse, low risk potential. Examples of these are Xanax, Ativan, Tramadol. And Schedule 5 is even lower abuse potential than Schedule 4 drugs. And examples of these types are your Robitussin AC, Lomotil, Lyrica. Now, there are some key restrictions to this policy, to this new bill that has passed, House Bill 423. The ARNPs are still required to prescribe according to the agreed upon physician protocol. Now, this physician protocol is a protocol under which ARNPs in Florida are required to practice. They are currently required to practice under protocols. It's just that until January 1st, 2017, these protocols cannot include the prescription of DEA scheduled narcotics. After January 1st, it will include, these protocols will be able to include DEA scheduled narcotics. So the ARNPs must follow written protocols, and this is a quote from the Florida Board of Nursing. The ARNPs must follow written protocols representing the mutual agreement of the physician or dentist and the ARNP. While these protocols have guided the practice of ARNPs in Florida, they did not allow for prescribing of controlled substances. Beginning in January of 2017, the protocols will include which controlled substances may be prescribed. While this is a step forward, it still is more restrictive than the scope of ARNPs. Once again, I'm reiterating that yes, we've made a step forward for nurses as far as taking leadership roles in the medical community, as far as practicing with their full scope, but there still are restrictions which nurses still must fight to overcome. So great progress. They can prescribe, ARNPs can prescribe, but there's still restrictions in place that the gap in healthcare really needs for the walls to be broken down. And this is still the state of Florida. This step forward is restrictive. It's great that it's less restrictive than the past once comes January 2017, but it's still more restrictive than 20 other states in the union. Florida nurses need to continue to advocate for full practice autonomy to be able to practice within the full scope as listed under the Board of Nursing. And ARNPs are not allowed to prescribe in registered pain management clinics. This is a map here that just shows full practice states, reduced practice, and restricted practice. You can see here the Deep South is pretty heavy in the restricted practice states. Almost all of the Deep South. You have Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma. And then once you get more to, now California jumps in there, which is kind of surprising for California to be restrictive in this type of practice. Your reduced practice states, you can see up here, New England areas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts actually is a restricted practice state. And then these lighter orange or yellow states are your full practice state. This is in which nurse practitioners operate under full autonomy. They're under no supervision by physicians. They are fully regulated by the Board of Nursing. And that is really the goal that we as nurses want to see across the entire 50 states of this nation. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you are interested in advancing the cause of getting health care to all those that need it in Florida. And one of the main ways to do that is to allow ARNPs and registered nurses to practice within their full scope as defined by the Florida Board of Nursing. Thank you very much. Here are my references. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you learned something, and goodbye.